Good morning. How are you today? Overcast, chilly, not spring-like, slight rain. So, it's okay. You can't have a perfect day every day. We had several last week. Because of the trial getting underway in Minnesota with George Floyd, of course, like everybody, I follow it. I know what I'd like the outcome to be. But I can't separate myself as a criminal defense lawyer, former prosecutor, civil trial lawyer, from my observations. And people say, could you represent somebody you knew was guilty? There are two reasons, basically, that you can do that. One, in my opinion, is that even if the person's guilty, and it's not easy to know that, by the way, the first question is, has the government overcharged in the case? Meaning charged for more offenses than the evidence actually supports. And that happens a lot to intimidate people out of having a trial, number one. And then number two, the punishment a prosecutor asks is often disproportionate to whatever offense the person either pleads to or is convicted of. So there are those two reasons. And then you don't always know. But in the case of Chauvin, the officer who killed George Floyd, there's not much doubt. So do you have to take a case like that? In my opinion, no, you don't. And I have a point of view in the case, so that's another reason why I shouldn't do it, because you have to have your unalloyed loyalty to your client. The question is Chauvin going forward with the trial, because people who are police, they won't allow him to do anything else. That's not my concern, but that's a factor. I don't want to get too deep into where the case is, and I don't think I could, on behalf of a client, just well, it's constitutionally prohibited, called the Batson error, to try to exclude blacks from the jury because it would favor Chauvin's defense. I think that's wrong. But I think that's what Chauvin's counsel is trying to do in the case right now. I say that justice, therefore, is a coincidence of our system, not a consequence of it. And that's wrong, but it's true. And it's not just persons who are of color or minorities. It happens uniformly. It's worse for persons of color, in my opinion. And it matters who you can get to represent you in terms of the skill of navigating the system. So the system is disconcerting. And when you have a bill on the Hill to better regulate it, and there's no impetus to implement it, that's pretty bad stuff. So I've observed both in civil and criminal cases that the system really doesn't deliver well. And it's really up to you as an advocate to help the system understand itself, realizing that you won't make, by whatever change you make in a case, it a habit of the system to do better and to be more equitable. So I've had some amazing experiences as a trial lawyer. I had a conversation with an old friend of mine today talking about cases, and made me think of a case I had many years ago involving a fellow named Richard Pay. Richard had been on 60 Minutes because he had pain, screaming, outrageous chronic pain, and he had prescriptions for painkillers that allowed him to function. But people couldn't believe he was taking so many pain medications, and so they thought he must be dealing. And they sent agents to follow him around, but they never saw him dispense a single tablet to any other third party. Still, they kept focusing on him, and they prosecuted him. They convicted him twice, and then a third time. And the third time they convicted him, the theory of the prosecution was that the doctor had written a prescription that itself wasn't lawful, And as a result, even though Richard Pei had nothing to do with it, they held him responsible for possessing drugs that were illegal because the prescription was illegal. And then they took this acetaminophen and they totaled up the weight of all the pills and decided that that was presumptively enough to assume he was trafficking when they knew exactly the opposite. And he got a 25-year minimum. I was brought into the case on the appeal. And my argument was an old 1960s case that basically said you can't prosecute a person for being ill. If his condition was he had chronic pain, he was taking medication for it, you couldn't punish him for that reason. And I convinced one of the three judges of this, and the prosecutor for the Attorney General in Florida actually cited a case supportive of my position, and I thanked him for it. I decided not to take it to the Supreme Court because the appellate courts were not helpful in Florida. So I sought a pardon from the governor, Ben Crist, who had been the AG, by the way, when I argued the appeal. And I asked for his release for the same reasons I'd argued before the court, basically. And I told him that in prison, they had given him as much pain medicine through a pump in a single day as the entire case against him, claiming he was trafficking. I said he was separated from his family because he was sick. Well, the governor and the three members of the cabinet said to me, how would you feel if we were to grant a full pardon right now? And I said something I've said on TV. I said, this is some sort of an IQ test. I was standing there with his wife and children and friends, and my friend standing next to me, Linda Pei, she started crying, and everybody who was there for their own cases at the state capitol in Florida, they were standing and they were cheering. And the governor and the members of the cabinet did enter that order. And the warden asked me if he could keep a copy of the order because no one had been released from prison in so many years. And then then we had another conversation, and he said, would you like him to be able to have a press conference? And I said, yes, I would. And he said, well, I'll set it up. Then he called me up and said, does he have any clothes? I said, no, only the prison garb. He says, well, I'll get him some clothes. Then he asked me how we were going to pick him up. And I said his wife was driving to the prison. And he said, tell her to go home. We'll deliver him to his house. Now, that's one of those stories where justice really works. Barry Scheck, who's an old friend of mine, who has the Innocence Project and has freed a lot of people who were going to death row or were convicted of serving time in prison. He told me I was a mensch and I had done a good deed. And he's a friend, but I couldn't have done it alone. It involved the governor, involved the deputy attorney general in his office, involved a lot of people, and it involved the entire cabinet in Florida. And think about it this way. I had to ask for a special pardon to get justice in an individual case. I'm not so sure what would happen today with the current governor in Florida. And that's our challenge. The Justice Act is only part of the solution. We need to do a lot more in America. And there can't be any room for presuming people have done something before you charge them and proven it. So, sorry to talk shop today, but I think we have to be aware that America has lots of problems to deal with after Trump that we haven't been dealing with very well. And it's going to be challenging when we have Republicans who just think certain people should be punished and they can ignore the law. So I'm sorry if I didn't smile a lot, but I am out here in my trees enjoying my walk, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.